The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions. How goes it?
I've been dealing with the Dark Wing Lance just all week. It's been a hell of a week.
It has. But I am sure that your dealings with it will be deeply, richly enhancing with like a narrative, like a deep, meaningful narrative structure. Like it'll come up regularly.
Pew,
you know?
pew, 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 pew. That's the narrative of this game. Pew, pew,
Yeah.
pew, pew.
Yeah. But we'll get into that with sound. But we played MechWarrior.
Yes. So I need to, before we do anything else, we have played a series of early games that were like either Atari ports or arcade ports, and they all have kind of the same crappy feel. And I'm not sure that I got your permission on this, but I'm putting that style of game as far out to pasture as is reasonable, because they just all feel like Rampage, right? Because they were meant to be quarter eaters. So when I started playing this game, I was like, this game really feels like it was designed as a computer game. Just turn to Wikipedia. Ah, yes, it was a computer game in 1989, and then in 1993 they put it on Super Nintendo, and the UI is almost unchanged. So that made me feel kind of good, that just by like simple little design elements, I was like, DOS game.
Yeah, it definitely has that feel, and we can get into that with the game mechanics, because it translated intriguingly from being using a keyboard and mouse to a console. And I think that most of the more recent ones have stuck to the console, and yeah, that's probably for the best.
Yeah, this is according to the first couple sentences of the Wikipedia article, that is the extent of our research. Apparently this is...
I'm judging you a little bit for just going that far, honestly.
No, this is this far, no farther. This franchise is like literally still running. Like they're making one of these right now, and it's going to ship like spring of next year.
No, I think didn't I show you the video to that, like the preview from E3?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, if you get a chance, Google that, audience, because it is everything you need to know about the MechWarrior franchise, which is basically a wall blows up, a mech walks into dun 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 dun, dun, and it's just explosions, and it's like that's it. That's the game. That's all you needed. You know?
Yeah. The entire teaser trailer. Literally, if you close your eyes, you would believe, like, when I open my eyes, I will be watching a Bugs Bunny cartoon, because it is literally that piece of orchestral music and the sound of explosions. And this game has like a really serious story, but I don't think they're going for that. Like, I think it's supposed to be Judge Dreddy, over the top. Like, I don't think anyone is sitting in their writer's room like, why won't they take me seriously? Like, I think they know that this is very like spectacular to the point of being silly, right? It's Pacific Rim, it's Gundam, for God's sake.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is I think like when you look at the different, core aesthetics, right? Narrative you ain't coming to this game for the narrative. If you are, then God, what literature do you read that this is rich by comparison?
So what are or do you have nostalgia goggles for this? I can't remember.
I don't have nostalgia goggles for this particular game. I recommended that we play something from MechWarrior, and we had this game. I played one of the MechWarriors for PC that was actually like true 3D, because this is, I don't know, like faux 3D, where it's
it's ray tracing.
Right.
It's Doom.
Yeah, it's Doom. It's Doom 3D. Doom's popular enough that I think that we could just attribute those two things together. But anyways, now I played one that was like true 3D, and actually I have a fun little nostalgia story, which was, I built my mech out, right? Because, I had to destroy this like moon base or something like that. And I managed to get to the moon base, destroyed all of the other mechs that stood in my way. But by the time I had gotten there, I had both of my arms and one of my legs blown off. So I was just, and the only thing I had weapon equipped on my torso was one small laser. And so I was just holding down the space bar pointed at this base. It's just like, pish, pish. And then my cousin, who was 10 years my senior and had played this game before and knew what he was doing, walked in and just roared at me. And I was like, what? And he's just like, you have one small laser and you're trying to take out a moon base? That would be like me walking up to you with a single wet noodle and going, die, die. Like you're going to be here for hours. And so I had to abandon it. And that was like very warm. And like, I was like, oh, and so I was like, yeah, we should play MechWarrior. This is going to be a fun nostalgic experience. It was not that I've never played this game.
No. So I have, which is, this game falls firmly into that, like, where did I play this camp? Although unlike some of the times, I'm almost positive this was a rental because I have that weird, clear mental picture of faded box art in the window of the Blockbuster, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I may have played this with Brian, but I'm like 95% confident this was a rental. And part of the reason to back that up is because I sat down and I fired it up and I was like, oh yeah, okay, MechWarrior. What do I do? Where do I go? Like, there's
bad
just
conveyance.
It's bad conveyance. There's just like feelings came back. Like, oh, I remember playing this. Oh, I remember driving my mech, but like what to do and how to behave in this society did not come back at all. So a lot of my experience was just trying to tease that out.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. But quick side note, I'm relatively confident that because you don't really watch that much American Dad, but do you remember the older one where there's the vacation goo where?
Yes. Yeah. It's a Total Recall joke.
Yeah, basically. I'm relatively confident that most of your childhood was constructed in one of those because.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you're Mr. Perfect Illusion. Like, is there a difference?
No, there isn't. But I'm starting to see some of like the cracks in the illusion where it's just like 4 or 5 games in a row. You're like, yeah, I don't actually remember distinctly. And like all of a sudden, like you like look back and like you see like the person, like with the gas mask on, like behind you, like taking notes, and you're like, no, wait, and it like snaps back to current frame. I'm confident by like season 4, we're gonna be recording this with you in a basement somewhere, like no, they're after me because I know now. So just something for our viewers to look forward to for a greater narrative. We used to do the Legend of Zelda thing, and now we're not doing that anymore. So now it's
now the overarching story is going to be the shadow government agency that's
hunting you, not me. My memories are real. I'm not a pod person.
no, absolutely not. So the one other thing I want to mention about this, just because I was spending so much of my playthrough trying to reconstruct what to do and just moving through this goo-induced cloud of feelings, apparently. So I've been really busy at work. October's a busy time of year for me. So when we decided we were going to play this, I was like, oh, okay. And then I kind of looked at my calendar and I was like, right, like the collar, the little collar tug. So I sat down to play it on a day that was not a good day at work, and literally 30 seconds into it, I was like, this game is dumb. And I hope everyone who worked on it is dead or currently in the process of dying because it's terrible. And everyone involved in it should be forgotten and feel bad for all of eternity. And then the next day, like I had a perfectly normal day and I was like, okay, I see what this game's about a little bit. Like this is fine. And then like I had another bad day and I was like, I hate everyone who worked on this game and I definitely want them all to die. And I like that happened a couple of days in a row where I was like, ooh, this is weird. Why is this game like an empty vessel into which I am pouring the quality of my workday? Like it's just a bizarre, like I had to intentionally play it on days that were like not super stressful at work so I could try and give it a fair shake.
Well, and I think that's interesting because I think there are games that are that, where they are like kind of like you said, the empty vessel. Because there are definitely some games, like for example, for me, for like Super Mario World, right, where that's always just going to slowly tick up your stamina meter, right? And then there are games like Overwatch, which will always slowly tick down your sanity meter. You know, like it can be eustress, but it's going to be stressful, right? But then there are some games where you're just like, this game is. What do I need to play this game? Only what you bring with you, you know. Like, it is the baggage that you have for that day, which it means it's as long as you know that, then it's like, oh well, if I had a great day, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna play some MechWarrior. If I had a crappy day, I'm gonna go home and not play some MechWarrior because that's just gonna make it way worse.
Which I wasn't thinking about this when I originally jotted this into my notes to share the story with you, but when you think about it, you play like a dude who's like a pseudo-military, pseudo-mercenary, right? He like pilots this mech and murders people for money with it. Like, I wouldn't want that guy to go into work if he was in a crap mood. Like, right?
Yeah.
Like, you would totally want him to like show up and do his job, not show up and be like, well, I needed to destroy the military base, so I also destroyed the surrounding town, even though that town was named Women and Children Only. I figured, you know, just to be safe, like, you don't want that dude going into work if he is in a crap mood. So maybe this is actually like a really fantastic design implementation.
Yes. I'm sure that everybody who worked on it were like, how can we make a game that really embodies the mercenary experience? Not, hey, what if we made Gundam, but legally distinct from, so we don't get sued? With that in mind, this leads, I think, nicely into visuals. It's a clean transition. I'm happy with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll ship it. I'll let this episode get out there.
So visuals, and as normal, we have visuals for the sake of visuals and visuals in service of gameplay. Visuals for the sake of visuals, I was nonplussed, but also not impressed, right?
Yeah, they're for this era, they are what you would expect. My problem with the visuals was actually how often the visual language let me down. So when you're because I mean the vast majority of the game is you are in your Mobile Suit Gundam and you are destroying other Mobile Suit Gundams, and that's what you do. That's the game, right? Mm-hmm. So that all happens in that like faux 3D ray tracing, and the Super Nintendo like struggled a little bit to do that with like a high level of fidelity. So when stuff is up pretty close, it actually looks pretty good. When it's out at like medium distance, it looks okay. When it starts to get beyond medium distance, it's just a mass of sad pixels that is indistinguishable from any other mass of sad pixels. And that's where I was kind of like, oh, well, you know, this visually is looking kind of clunky. The visual things that bothered me, like that I took note of, were actually very beautifully rendered and just wrong. So like when you finish a mission, it's the guy in like his, you know, Mobile Suit Gundam suit. I guess you need to wear special pajamas to pilot this thing. And he's holding like a laser rifle. Why is he holding a laser rifle? Like you're not like an infantryman. You are in the friggin' Gundam. Like, why are you doing that? And then when you lose a mission, it shows you the most horrifying face of terror, right? Just like these great staring eyes and this gaping horror-filled mouth. Like it's just like visual, like the artwork is fine, but it's just like, why? I didn't die. Like, why do I look this horrified? I didn't win with that laser rifle. Why do I have this laser rifle?
Yeah, no, definitely both of those were like odd choices. And again, like the things that you know, as I said, like added to my confusion, right, was like little things like that kind of build a background of discordance. I felt like, and we'll touch on this more during gameplay, which is but as we've talked about before, is that sometimes there's a keystone, right? That, you know, if it's lifted out or if there's a problem with it, the entire thing's come down. And I think that the thing that we continually will circle around with this is pacing, right? You know, this game has just up and down garbage pacing, and we can talk about that more in mechanics. But the problem is that there's a tremendous amount of information that's provided to you via your basically your HUD, which actually, and a HUD is, I think, a good choice for this game because it is a literal, like, you're in the cockpit. It makes sense to have an actual
it's literally the instrument panel that's in front of you.
Right. Perfect. That's fine. Ship it. Love it. Love everything about it. But the problem is that you get dropped into this planet and immediately start to get wrecked by like other mechs. So you're just immediately like turning around and just like hammering whatever button makes things die. And so like I'm sure that had like a bunch of really cool, interesting information on it, that would really help me like get into like being the MechWarrior. But I never got to see any of it because I was so busy firing pixels at other pixels. Because as you mentioned, is that like as things get further and further away, they get poorer and more poorly rendered, which is again entirely understandable for the hardware. But if that is the case, then they should have built the game for more in close quarters combat, right? But if one of those mechs is up in your grill enough to see how pretty the artwork is, then you have screwed up, sir, because he is correcting your business.
So good save. So
thank you.
I realized on one of my good days playing this that I basically played this game through the HUD, and the mass of stuff on like through my windshield was secondary. So if you use the radar effectively, you could actually have the entire part of the screen with the glass, like where you're looking out through the front of the mech, basically blacked out and still be victorious, generally speaking.
Homing missiles, especially.
Yes, especially with those. Because when you are close enough to an enemy that the guns you have equipped can hit them, you get a nice little green reticle around them. And if you're using homing missiles, the one true weapon, then you don't even have to be a very good shot because, I mean, it's got homing right in the name. So right. If you know vaguely which direction they're in, which this little satellite radar thing will give you, and then you know more precisely where they are because of the little reticle, like, oh, they're actually close enough for me to shoot them, you can kind of ignore everything else. And I found the more I played it and the more I was starting to like kind of get into it, the more I was just relying on those gauges of information and not what my eyes were actually showing me.
And I definitely agree with you. I think that the HUD is basically kind of all that you need. But I think that what they're trying to sell you on is, again, like being the MechWarrior. And the fact that, like, even if you were to look at like screen ratio, as far as what they think you should be paying attention to, like about a quarter of it is your HUD and the rest of it is the on-screen details. So again, I'm a lot of times like if they make a choice where I'm just kind of like, well, you know what, that's fine. It's maybe not my cup of tea. Then I won't like kind of give it negative marks in my mind. But when they make a choice that's in clear conflict with what they're trying to do and has an easy solution, it confuses me. And again, like it's just kind of like, if you know your game looks like garbage when you're trying to do long range fighting, then why do you make the primary method of fighting long range? Yeah,
I mean that's those kinds of design decisions, whenever the visuals completely fall down for a design decision, like, oh, we do all this long range combat, everything looks like a mess when it's out at long range. Yeah, but that's how the PC version did it, right? And that's where those kinds of things, I'm always like, this is why ports have the sort of stereotype around them that they do, because people are like, well, that game was already good, and then you just ported it to a less powerful piece of hardware, and now it's less good, right? Or at best, it's like comparable because you found ways around the limitations of this weaker hardware, right? I mean, it's the exact same thing with arcade games. Like, you have these super powerful custom computers, they bring them to the friggin' Nintendo or Atari or whatever, and it's a 1/100th the power.
It's a shadow, yes. Yeah, a mere shell of what it once was.
Yeah, and so also, I don't think it ruins the experience, but it definitely makes it less like cinematic. I mean, it's just like, I fired my blob at your blob, and then your blob turned into a bunch of small blobs that represent an explosion.
Well, yeah, I mean, it'd be kind of like, getting all geared up to go to Disney World, and instead you go to Disneyland. It's like,
Take that, California.
But no, I mean, and also too, because one of the things I was thinking of is that when I was firing at a random pixel, desperately hoping that my homing missiles would get the job done, is what I thought. And I don't know if this would be. I feel like this would not be more hardware intensive, or not to the point where like the Super Nintendo couldn't handle it. But basically, if something is beyond mid range, right, where it really starts to look like crap, right, just represent it as a little dot, a little smudge, and then put a little green box around it, and then have an expanded box like out to like the right that gives you like the zoomed in view, because that would look cool, because it's like your high-tech computer is like zooming in on this like far off object. It's like, this is what it actually looks like. This is what your missiles are hitting. Oh, its arm blew off. Like all of that would be really super engaging, and then once it gets to a certain point of closeness, then you just get rid of that, because it's close enough to the point where the computer, your mech computer, wouldn't need to compensate anymore.
Yeah. No, I don't know if you realize this, but that's actually kind of already happening, and just not in a way that solves this problem. So they came up with that solution and then didn't implement it.
You mean with the mech at the bottom?
Yes.
Of the HUD? Yeah.
Which is always the same scale regardless of your distance to it, and it shows you which parts of the mech you're doing damage on. So take that part of the HUD, put it on the screen, and now you have a super camera that's zooming in, right? Maybe they tried something like that, or they considered something like that, and with more than a couple of mechs in front of you, it's just way too busy, because in the corner it only does that for the one you're hitting. So if you are not firing your weapons, that part of the screen just has nothing in it, where it's mostly empty. So if you had the camera version of that visual, it would be displayed all the time as long as they were in your field of vision and at, between distance A and distance B. So maybe processing power, or just maybe too much visual clutter, but they kind of agree with you. Like, what if we just showed it full resolution all the time?
Right. And that's the thing, though, is that then the issue then comes back to the keystone pacing, right? Which is that because everything's so frantic, like on the screen, I saw that and I was just kind of like, oh yeah, that's kind of neat, but it's not like it doesn't pop. It's not eye catching, So like I just kind of saw that and I was like, oh yeah, that's the mech that I'm damaging. But then I would focus back onto the screen again, because because of the way they're represented. Now again, if the HUD was like half of the screen, or better yet, if like even if they wanted to represent on the HUD, which is totally legit, if they moved that part like to the bottom right and then made it like a quarter of the screen, like bigger, saying like this is what you're looking at, then I would know. So the developers should be leveraging the screen with how much you should be paying attention to it, to like harken back, for example, to Oregon Trail, where like 3/4 of the screen is your HUD, because that's what you should be paying attention to. 1/4 of the screen is the crappy little animation of the ox pulling a cart, which is just there for flavor, right? So it seems like they were like, well, the HUD is going to be the crucial thing that you absolutely need to be looking at. And then they said, but let's make 3/4 of the screen something that's not that. And then let's also set the pacing up to 11. So that way you can't glance, like the time it takes you to glance at your HUD and glance back up, you kind of lost a whole lot. Let's do all of that. And let's just throw all that together. And it's like, ooh, no, none of that's going to work out well. Another side note, this is just kind of a pet peeve of mine. I don't know when I've like honed in on it, but now every time I see it, I'm just kind of like, this is not great. And also it's what was it? Not developing for disability, right? Which is, dude, firing and or getting hit by lasers is seizure inducing. It just, the whole screen flashes white. I don't feel like it adds anything. I think it would be better to have the screen rumble,
Yeah, that's way more computationally intensive. Yeah, I agree with you that the flashing is jarring, but I don't think it flashes so fast or for so long that it's uncomfortable. And I don't mean, because there is actually a measurable amount of flashes that is considered a risk for someone who has propensity for seizures. And I know it's nowhere close to that, because that is way faster than you think it is. But I mean, like, even if you don't have that kind of health consideration, flashing lights are still annoying. But I just don't feel like, even when I was getting wrecked and I'm just surrounded by dudes laser in my face, I didn't feel like it flashed that fast. And because you lose life so fast, if you're seeing a lot of flashing, you're not going to see it for long because you're about to die. So, I mean, I agree with you that it's not my favorite way to convey that kind of information, to just literally flash the entire television screen solid white. But it didn't bother me so much as I just don't like it. It's just like, yeah, okay. It's like, you know what it is? It's like 90s action cartoons where Batman would punch the Joker, but they can't actually show his fist loosening his teeth. So like 3 frames before it makes contact, the whole screen flashes white. And then when it comes back from the flash, the Joker's like getting knocked to the ground already.
It's just way worse.
It's way worse. It makes everything look hyper violent.
Oh yeah, no, it looks like literally he hit the Joker so hard that like his, retina's detached, like
yes.
It's just, I mean, we've both done some martial arts, man. I think we've both been popped hard enough to where you see that white flash. So it feels like every time he hits him, he's hitting him that hard. It's like, I've been hit a number of times, but only a handful of times have I seen that white flash. And that's when I got laid out.
Yeah. And I like to believe that the Batman does not do things in half measures, and he is actually going for that level of damage every time. But do I want to, sit in front of a game for several hours and see all of that flashing? Maybe not. Maybe know what it is? It's we need to get good, because if you're seeing any flashing, it means you done screwed up.
If you're seeing any flashing, you've screwed up. Name of your sex tape. So, anyways. Not sure if that's going to stay in the episode, but
no, that's totally staying. And us debating whether or not we're going to leave that in. This is all just going out live to tape.
Excellent, love it, love everything about it. No, I think that the white flashing is or the screen flashing, that is my walking sound effect.
Yeah, no, that checks out. It is annoying enough to deserve that title.
Yeah, where it's just kind of like every time I see it, I'm like, what? I don't like this. I mean, and I'm sure there are a lot of like. There to me, there are just so many different workarounds, including none workarounds. Just give it a sound, I'd rather that than like being accosted by that.
Yeah. Or because you have a HUD, and because when you take damage, your mech on the HUD already flashes like a red yellow. There you go. There's your flashing, but it's not the whole screen. It's just the arm or the leg or the torso, whatever part's taking damage. I will say, because we're crapping pretty hard on the visuals here. I did actually really like that the different planets had like dramatically different appearances, although there doesn't seem to be any significant mechanical differences. So it's just like, oh, this planet looks different. But honestly, like from a visuals standpoint, like because you spend all of your time in combat, it's kind of nice to have this like, oh, now I'm on ice planet Hoth. Now I'm on Tatooine. Now it's like very clear. Now I'm on Waterworld with Kevin Costner. Like it's just really obvious when you're in a specific planet. And I assume after playing for a while, you probably start to just kind of internalize this. Like, oh, that's the ice planet. That's the desert planet. That's the water planet.
And I agree with you. I really did like those visuals. I would have liked them more, again, Keystone pacing, if I got to see more of them at a shot. But yeah, I did really like that visuals for the sake of visuals. I do have a positive note for visuals in service of gameplay, which is on the menu select screens, they actually gray out or fuzz out options that are not applicable, and I like that. I like that it's just kind of like, for example, like you can't go to a mission before you select the mission you want to do. So that's just not an option, so, or you're not like hammering, like, why won't this go? What do I do?
Yeah. And I agree with you that is a good way to convey that information. Like this button is disabled, right? You literally cannot press this button, right? It's not that you can press it and nothing happens. It's that you literally cannot press it. What I think is hilarious is that this game is supposed to take place in like the year like 3026 or something. And
20xd6,
30xd6,
30xd6.
But then it's these are like CRT monitors, that have that have snow because they're not getting a signal. Like, oh, you didn't tighten the coax on the back and now it's all fuzzy. Like, it's just one of those visual cues. Like when you pick up your smartphone and the icon for the phone still looks like a 1920s friggin' like giant handset that you would get installed by AT&T into your house. Like, it's like you don't own the phone, you're renting it from the phone company. Like the snow on the monitors, the little displays that you can't select is that. It's just, they might as well just be laser discs and telegraphs.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair point, because it's the one type of that thing that always stands out to me is in Star Trek, whenever they need to like show that somebody's like overwhelmed or overworked, they're carrying like 20 data pads, you know, from point A to point B. It's like, how many books are you reading? It's one of two things. It's either A, how little storage data is there on that, because it's way less than my phone, you know, and then, or two, my God, how many books do they expect you to read? Because that would be trillions of books. The entire sum of human knowledge is like, oh, I gotta read all of this by Wednesday. It's like, oh my God, are you like jacking into the Matrix? Like,
yeah, no, it's definitely, it's a visual affordance that even if you had never, because I mean, for a lot of, like, if you gave this to a kid right now, there is a chance they have literally never seen snow on a television. Like, I mean, why would they, right?
If you give a teenager a phone today, they've probably never seen an actual, like, the phone symbol that's representing, unless it's like in an old movie.
Yeah, and they have enough cultural knowledge to recognize it. Like, I think someone would see the snowy monitor and be like, oh, I can't select that one. I guess that means like out of order or disabled, right? And they would piece it together just like you would expect a good visual affordance to be pieced together. The only thing I just can't get over is like how it dates it, right? Like some old sci-fi, you can tell like, oh, this is from the 70s, or this is from the 80s, this is from the 50s, because there's that one like linchpin assumption in that decade that they just made Chrome in the future. And it's like, back, my favorite example of this has got to be, and we're way far afield here, but I don't care because this is funny. My favorite example of this has got to be in Back to the Future 2, when they go into like future Marty's house and he gets fired, and there's fax machines all over the house that are integrated into the house. Like, the home of the future will just have fax machines everywhere.
Yeah.
And so it's like they were forward thinking enough to believe that like communication technology would become like ubiquitous and commonplace, but they still thought it would be a dot matrix fax machine.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I know that with some forms that I fill out for the lab, where they're like, "What's your like government forms like? What's your phone number? What's your fax number?" For fax number, I just put dash because I'm like, don't fax us. Why would you ever do that? Like,
we have one, but no.
Yeah, but still no. Yeah, no, and that's a great example. But do you have anything else for visuals?
I do, and this will be, I think, a good transitional note to end on. So when you finish a mission and it says mission complete, you don't, like, you lose control, right? Like, the second that last mech is defeated, or there's a few missions where you have to like pick up an object. Once you complete the mission, your mech, through forces that are not described or explained, rockets straight up into the sky. And I cannot see that visual and take it seriously because it's
because
just
of the
like
Poochie visual.
It's just so ridiculous. It's just like mission complete.
Well, it is absolutely like mission complete. I have to return to my home planet.
Yes. Poochie died on the way back to his home planet. Yeah, it's just every single mission. Because at first I was playing this game and I was just utter rubbish, and like I did start to like kind of get my vibe going. So I was seeing the success visual more and more often, and every single mission I was just like, oh man, I barely made it by the skin of my teeth. Like, oh god, it's just so, and I just, this is why I think this might be a good transitional note, because I desperately wanted there to be a sound effect of like boop 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 boop. Like,
yeah, no, agreed. As far as sound goes, as you know, I've got my troglodyte ears, so you know, I tried my best to find some good music notes. The one thing that I found was that with most of the background music, there's a very consistent drum-like beat, which is would be very is very on theme. Yeah, very military themed. However, at the end of each phrase, it incrementally has a key shift, which tends to build tension in the background with that type of music, which I felt harmonized really well with the militaristic beat to kind of like build tension as well.
You done patting yourself on the back over there?
Nope. Nope. More to come. I'm really disproportionately proud of myself, actually.
No, that's legit. And actually, so I had a weird remark on the music in this, which is the tunes seem pretty thoughtful and like pretty well like on theme. There's a little bit of music that plays only when you're starting a mission that like builds the tension. There's the background music during the mission. There's like the different music when you're on your star base, when you're on the Death Star, whatever. So like there's and it all has this kind of like drum beat military through line, like very, like kind of 4/4, you could play it with a snare. The one thing that I thought was interesting, and I can't remember if I've ever felt this way about any of the other games that we've played, is the audio in combat matters, right? Like they're trying to feed you useful information. Now, granted, in a modern game, they would probably do some kind of like stereo panning. So it's like, I'm getting shot from the left. I'm getting shot from the right because the audio is coming from that direction. I don't think they could reliably do that at this time. I know the technology exists, but I don't think they could reliably do it. And it certainly didn't sound that way, or at least not dramatic enough that I was like, oh, they're doing it. But what I did notice is the music ducks considerably under the sound effects. So when you land, you're like, aha, there's this like military music and like I'm off to combat. The second you start firing or getting fired upon, or more likely both of those things are happening at the same time, the music almost fades out entirely, which is like almost a bummer, like because it's good like on theme music and it's just completely fades out under the sound of lasers and pew pew and it's like, yeah, I know I need to hear these noises to help me stay on top of what's happening combat wise, but like can I turn the radio up like a little bit, like like it's on like a 2, can I turn it up to like a 3.5 just so I can like kind of recognize the song without having to like lean my head against the door speaker? Like I don't know, it was weird how much the music specifically ducks under the sound effects.
See, and now that I feel like is a missed opportunity for the game, right? Because, and to be fair, this is not like speaking poorly of the game. No, I don't think any real games at the time did stuff like this. Like with like Fallout, where you have your Pip-Boy and you can turn on the radio and stuff like that. But how awesome would it be, right, if there was like a and again, you'd have to like maybe dedicate a button to it. I'm not even sure how the UI would work, but how awesome would it be, just theoretically, started with the concept of like the idea is that you're the mech warrior and you're sitting there listening to the radio, and so that's like what's coming through. And so the idea is that like as like things are like hitting you and whatnot, like that's louder than the radio. So like the idea is that it's just kind of like you're like, oh man, I've got to focus on all this sort of stuff. So that's probably why they're doing it. Is the idea is it's like, all right, you've got the background music, but then that fades out in your mind as you're focusing, like you're the consummate, you're the mech warrior. But what if they also had the option to where you could be the renegade mech warrior who, like, when they're getting hit really bad, they just crank the music up to 11?
Yes. So what this demeanor, this, like, screw it, I'm just gonna, turn it, crank my tunes kind of attitude always makes me think of is, I don't know how long it's been since you watched Cowboy Bebop all the way through, but do you remember? You never watched Cowboy Bebop at all,
no.
Or all the way through?
All the way through. I've gotten like a few episodes into it every time, and then I just something happens where I just fall off of it. But anyways,
oh man! So there's 26 episodes. They're each roughly 25 minutes, so you could do it in give or take 13 hours. I'm now going to kidnap you and make you watch Cowboy Bebop all the way through because it's.
I'm down.
Yes. Okay. So plans for this weekend.
Wait, what?
What? Okay, so there's an episode of Cowboy Bebop that you would have known about if you were a good person, called Heavy Metal Queen, and it's like one of those ridiculous like truckers in space, like as if trucking would be done exactly the same way when we have space travel as it's done on a planet,
as it's done on fax machines.
Yes, exactly, right. More of that, like, but this is done on purpose. It's silly for the sake of silly, like, oh, they're just like truckers we know. But there's a part of the episode where this cargo has leaked out of this truck, and it's all these like kind of like pill looking containers, and they're all unbelievably explosive. And so they're in space, so they're just like floating around inside of this area that they're in. And Faye is like, oh, I need to use the little clamp arms, but I have to be really careful because if I puncture one of them, everyone will die. And the Heavy Metal Queen, who's one of the truckers, is like, yeah, I mean, I guess you could be a wuss about it, or you could just go for it. And she just cranks the music up and like this like super crazy, like heavy Japanese like death metal. And she just like cranks it up super loud on the stereo, and Faye's like, this is not helping. But like that's the attitude like I wish you just had the option for, right? Is that you could just be like, I'm the mech warrior. Like, I don't need to pay attention to what I'm doing. I need to pay attention to these dope ass beats. Like,
man,
that would be that. I mean, that's very way more PC than Super Nintendo. But like, come on.
Oh yeah, man. Now that we're just building this new game out that it should have been. You know what it could have done is what if there was like a hero select, you know, where you could be like the consummate, you know, like Marine professional, and they could have like little things like, you know, like the Marine professional has like better targeting or something like that, whereas like the you know, rogue, like it costs less for them to repair it because they do all the repairs themselves, you know, stuff like that.
Right.
But like how fleshed out and real would the world be if the rogue character or whatever also like their music didn't duck out, it got louder the more damage they took. Like little things like that would have been delicious, man. Like I would have just eaten that up. But
I wouldn't be surprised to find out the more recent MechWarrior games have pilots in addition to different mechs that they pilot with that kind of stuff in there. This time in history, like we cannot possibly ding them for not doing that. But yeah, just give me to bring this way back to audio, like just give me, if you're going to write good music, like give me more of the good music. Don't let me know that somewhere off in the distance good music is playing, but thank God I have all these explosion sound effects. Like it's just it's so much terrible music in video games and just in the world in general. Like if you're going to have well executed music, like let me hear it.
For sure. One of the things for sound effects, though, that and I'm not saying this to aggravate you, although I hope it does, is this is one of the times where I actually did feel that the walking sound effect kind of added to it. It wasn't really obnoxious because it wasn't like high pitched or grating or anything like that, and it did to me like I feel if it wasn't there, it would have. It did give you the feel that you're walking as a mech, not driving. You know. Around, so I felt like it added to like the yes, I'm in the huge mechanical robot because it's making this huge thud with every step that I take, and I did feel that actually added to the immersion.
Yeah, and I can do you one better. Not only does it feel appropriate because you're in this giant Gundam, brought to you by Gundam, but but I think that. Some of the missions, particularly the earlier missions where you're kind of more green, you're like new to this, there's fewer enemy mechs that you have to destroy. Sometimes you have probably 2 to 8 seconds before you engage your first enemy. And once the guns start firing, if the walking around noise is even happening, you can't hear it because there's all of this gunfire noise. And I kind of like I'm not, my fingers are on the triggers because I know I'm about to take a bunch of human lives, but I'm not firing my gun yet. So all I can hear is the sound that this gigantic death machine makes as it's like on patrol. And then once combat is entered, of course it's still making noise, but I can't hear it because all of my attention is on, are my rockets landing? Did that laser just hit my armor? So like, I actually agree with you that there is a strong immersion benefit to not only having the noise, but then when the noise goes away, like you're kind of aware of its absence because like you're now hyper focused on this other thing. So yeah, this may be the first, like, not just okay walking noise, but like good walking noise that we've encountered.
And if you can put up with that, I'll just slap on my Ray-Bans and deal with the laser flashes. Brought to you by Ray-Ban. I'm really now trying to get sponsorship through Ray-Ban. I've decided, like, that's gonna be a new thing.
No,
So,
I would take some free Ray-Bans. Give me free Ray-Bans.
do it. All we need. So if anybody with Ray-Ban that watches the show, just get in contact with the normal ways. Go outside of your house. But
I would love to see that news story, like, like CFO of Ray-Bans arrested yesterday for screaming.
We'll sponsor you for Ray-Bans. But then we'd know, though, just to be fair. I mean,
we would know, but he's just waving armfuls of glasses around in the air. I love what you're doing. Your critiques are fantastic.
Do you have anything else for sound?
I don't. I think all day I've been thinking about when we eventually discussed the walking noise, and we've done that now, and I can now rest easy.
Excellent. Well, in that case, we can finally get to the piece de resistance. The pacing. The pacing in this game. Okay, it's impressively bad. Although, to be fair, I think that this is the best analogy. It's the Kentucky Derby of video games, right?
Go on.
So the Kentucky Derby is actually, I believe it currently is like generally considered to be the record holder for the longest build to shortest time actually competing, right?
Oh, right, because it's days or maybe even weeks of lead up and analysis and how's this jockey, how's that horse, and then the race is probably like 45 seconds.
Exactly. So even with any other sports game or anything like that, the game itself lasts for, I mean, at least at an hour, whereas this, like, bam, 45 seconds, it's done, and I felt that that's an apt analogy for this game because, you spend a whole bunch of time repairing your mech and then outfitting your mech and then determining what mission you want to do and then haggling over the price for the mission, which doesn't work a lot of the times.
No,
and then,
that is an interesting mechanic, though. I'm kind of interested that they threw that in. I'm frustrated by how seldom it seems to matter at all.
Right. Yeah. So like all of that goes down. You're like, all right, let's do this. Oh, it's over.
Yeah. Blam, blam, blam. Mission complete. Or blam, blam, blam. You died.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, all right. And because the fight pacing is so fast, like I've said before, is that, like, you can't really appreciate a lot of the visuals, a lot of that kind of stuff that's going on. And on top of that, I kind of felt that it detracted from a lot of the really interesting mechanical choices that they make out of combat, because at some point I was like, yeah, I don't really care. I just want to shoot some stuff for more than like 2 minutes. So fine, whatever. I'll take this mission. Sure. Pay me whatever. I don't care. Like, I just want to just repair the ship. He's like, do I need to re-outfit it? Do I need to get better weapons? I don't know. Maybe, but it doesn't matter right now. Like, let's just go fight and do a thing, So I felt that caused some substantial issues.
Yeah, which I didn't feel that quite as bad as you're describing, although I was definitely aware of it because it's impossible not to be. but it feels a little bit on theme, right? Like, as a soldier, most of your life is being a person who's waiting to go be a combat soldier, right? Like, if all day, every day you are in active combat, then when you get home, all day, every day will be in therapy, dealing with all of the time you spent with bullets whizzing by your head and sending your bullets whizzing into other people's heads, right? Like, it would be emotionally unsustainable to be in real combat full time. That being said, it is a video game, and I would totally accept, like, a checkbox that lets me auto repair. Like, when I get back from a mission, if I have enough money, just repair it. Just don't make me go to the repair shop and say that I need to repair it. Like, let me do things that will optimize for time in combat if that's what I want to get out of this. But I do feel like the dichotomy of preparing for combat, vastly overwhelming time in combat, is kind of appropriate.
It is. I mean, like, you can definitely say that it's on theme. The problem is, in my opinion, where it starts to fall apart from that, is that the pacing is so off, like in the battle itself, right? Like even if the battle was like, 2 or 3 minutes long or something like that, right? But it wasn't the whole time like, oh God, and like just like blow up the mech, whatever, right? Then I could deal with the depth out of combat, because where it really the other note that I have here, which leads in nicely, which is like all of these options and mechanical nuance just make me wonder why I should give a damn, because the issue is, it's like, okay, well, how much does your mech weigh? Because that can change how fast it moves. What's your weapons output? Because that can change, like what range you can commit to combat, right? Lasers, like those have infinite ammo, but then the missiles, they have limited ammo. So you may want to switch between those two. Heat sinks, like, oh, well, lasers build heat though. So you may want to build, and all of that's great, except for the fact that then none of it seemed to really matter, because it's like, oh well, you weighed down your mech with armor. It's like, great, I don't really need to move anyways. I'm just gonna sit here and shoot at people. It's like, oh well, your lasers are over. I'm never using lasers. I'm just gonna use the homing missiles. So just load me up with those, I guess.
All of those mechanics feel like they are thematically appropriate, that they're like, oh, you need to be aware of this and you need to be aware of that. The problem is, in the actual gameplay, they didn't execute to a variety of missions, because you can have, once you acquire enough money, you can have more than one mech at a time, which presumably, like, this is my heavy fighter mech, this is my like light and spry, nimble mech, right? And if there were different mission types, which it acts like there are, but there aren't. They're just all combat. But if there was a mission type which was like, you have to get from point A to point B, or you have to safely like an escort mission, or you
escort a convoy.
Yeah, whatever. Like you're a guard. You're not looking for combat. You're trying to avoid it, right? So,
or like you have to destroy. You just have to destroy a target. So engaging with mechs is ancillary. Like right. You don't get penalized for it, but there's no reason to. Like that would be a reason to have like, well, I need a super fast mech because I don't need to deal with these guys at all. I'm just going to run in, blow this thing up, and then whoop, 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 whoop,
Yeah, and because every single map is about the same size, right? They're laid out very differently in terms of like how much water's there, and water is the only terrain that seems to have a mechanical difference, because like you sink down into the water and you move slower. So like if there's a lot of water, if you're on, Moana's planet or whatever, and like you have to deal with that, then that's one thing. But generally speaking, you can more or less stand damn near perfectly still, because they will come to you and then you can shoot their faces off, right? So having a light and spry mech with low armor and that is super fast, you would never do that. There's absolutely no reason to do that. You always end up falling in this kind of middle area where you're like, well, I want like medium to high armor. I want as many, homing missiles as I can carry, and everything else I do not care about even in the slightest. Like, right. I actually, to get money, which I want to talk about the money in a second, but to get money to buy more missiles, I actually got rid of my jump jets completely. Because I was like, oh, once you have homing missiles, there's literally zero reason to fly ever. Like it serves no function unless you have a weapon that can only shoot straight in front of you, which homing missiles are homing missiles, so they home.
Did you know how to make it so you don't shoot straight in front of you?
Yes, but with the homing missiles, it doesn't matter. Although it did take me a while to figure that out.
Yeah, no, I actually kind of figured it out in combat, where I imagined that my MechWarrior was just like drastically like slapping his HUD. Like, why isn't this working? Because I hit a button. Like I was just like trying buttons. I hit a button like while I was just happening to press down, and all of a sudden my target like went straight to the bottom. Like no. And so then like I was like, what? How do I undo this? And and then I think I managed to pull it out, or just barely didn't. But yeah, no, that was not telegraphed well. But
no, the controls are not communicated in a super obvious way. But I want to make sure we talk about the money, because I don't know why they made this specific mechanical choice other than just in the service of being really forgiving. But the fact that you could sell or dial down any of your equipment and get full market value back for it was amazing, because it's basically their way of saying like, hey, you want to experiment? Knock yourself out. Like, if you add a bunch of armor and it costs you 100,000 credit bills or whatever the hell C bill stands for,
Quatlus.
If you C notes, if you want to add a bunch of armor and it costs you a bunch of C notes, and then you realize like that's more armor than you need, you can sell back that armor and get full price. So like you could just dial the stat. It almost makes money a pointless third good, because you can just dial the stats of your mech up and down willy-nilly as long as you have this like mana pool of money.
Right.
And at first I was like, oh, this is so weird. And then the third or fourth time I caught myself just flippantly experimenting with a loadout, I was like, oh, I get it. Okay. Because it makes this possible and even like enticing, because the penalty for failure is one lost mission.
Right. And that's really, that is a good choice. And I think that to kind of speak to what you were talking about before, where it's like different loadouts, different mechs should lend itself to different mission types, but there weren't any. The version of it that I played, right, did have those different mission types. Like there was go destroy a target, there was escort a convoy, there was all sorts of wild different ones. I remember distinctly, like, you know, I had my big heavy hitting mech, and you know, just I was like, this is not working for me. Let me try something else. And then I did get a small lithe, you know, mech, and that worked well. You know, so I think that whoever made it, if the same company made it, or maybe another one picked it up, I think that they knew that was something that they wanted to do, and they got like, they kind of like built the foundation with this game, and then later titles actually were able to put a building on it. But right now we're just in the cold rain with a foundation built around us, being like, why isn't this helping? You know?
Yeah. No, a lot of, I feel like a lot of long running series, when you go back to an earlier game in the series, you can see, oh, these designers were not stupid. They knew what the third or fourth entry in the series was going to be like, but the technology wasn't there, or the idea wasn't fully formed yet, or it wasn't until, you know, hours and hours of playtesting that they were like, oh, maybe this additional feature or functionality would add like this whole level of depth, right? So I you know, part of me just wants to be like, I wish everything was better, because then it would be better. But that's not really useful critique, right? What I do think is a fair critique is don't act like you have multiple mission types when really they are all turn in circles and fire rockets until the mission ends, because that's what there's like 3 or 4 different mission types, and they're all turn in place and fire rockets until the mission ends.
Exactly. To bring it back to something we kind of touched on, the negotiation mechanic.
Oh, you mean the option that doesn't work ever? That one?
Yeah, that one. That, again, like you said, like, even because here's the problem, is that even if it did work, I don't really think it's the right choice for this game, because again, I think that it screws up the pacing, right? Because if it doesn't work, then it shouldn't be there at all, right? It's just something that frustrates you for a little while and then you abandon it, which is what I did, and I assume you did, right?
Samesies, yes.
Yeah. The other option is then you should negotiate every time. Like if it works intermittently, then you should try, you know, every time, which means that basically it's just now another unnecessary step, right? Where it's just kind of like, it's kind of like, in all honesty, most of the times when I go into a negotiation, I don't know if this is a great negotiation mechanic.
You can do this. Negotiation tactic.
Thank you. I got there. Well, the first thing that I do is I pretend I can't say negotiation. Then
take pity on me. I'm dumb.
But no, I literally just go in and be like, this is the maximum that I can offer. I'm not going to negotiate with you. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to waste my time. This is what I can offer. Like, ooh, I don't know if we can do this. Like, that's fine. Then we got it. Then walk away. You know, like I'm not screwing with you. This is our max, you know?
Well, that's depending on your situation. You don't have to spill all the details of your life, but depending on the situation you would use that tactic in, you are optimizing for time, like to minimize time spent procuring this good or service, right? Because it's like, oh well, if you had stayed and haggled for that Honda Civic, you could have saved $1,000. And it's like, yes, but by not haggling, I saved 4 hours, and 4 hours of my life I've decided is worth $250 an hour, right? So like there's a very real like I'm paying money to be done sooner that I don't think is I mean, you have to have the funds to spend in that way, but I think in the game universe, they're essentially saying like, oh, these are mercenaries and they're not soldiers. They're not just collecting a paycheck. They, every job is up for debate on how much they're willing to risk their lives for those sweet sea bills. And it's like, yeah, but that's like thematic. Like, I don't want to actually do all that haggling. I just need to know that these are the kind of people that kill for money, right? Like, I need to know that theme is taking place. I don't want to then literally like review contracts with the people who are hiring me.
Right. And that's the thing is that, again, a way to offload that would be like if you had like an acclaim ranking, where it's just kind of like you're getting paid more because you're a highly acclaimed mercenary. So basically they're handling the negotiation part on you, where it's just for you. We're saying like your negotiation tactics or your, just your reputation itself is making this worth more versus like you've been flubbing everything, so it makes it worth less. That's actually not a great mechanic because it's a negative feedback loop. But because the worse you do, the less money you'll be making. But that being said, if they wanted to have that in there,
you just have a baseline. Like mercenaries are worth this much, no matter how much they suck.
Yeah, how terrible they are. But anyways, so I just felt that again, that was just one of the choices that they made. Like, I like the fact that they kind of like let you pick missions. That's cool. But again, that takes a little bit of time. I like that, that you pick your loadout. That takes a little bit of time. So this one additional one to me is like the person saying, like, hey, we've got 3 different flavors of ice cream, like vanilla, chocolate, or people. What? Chocolate? Like it's that we all of a sudden like now you're like, no, wait a minute. None of this adds up at all. Like because when they did that, I'm like, okay. Everything else, I was just kind of like, no, you're creating this time of depth. Now I'm wondering if you're just not being respectful of my time as a player. Like that one makes me double back to the other ones and being like, okay, could you have done a better job streamlining some of this other stuff too? Because clearly you added this part in and you didn't really give a damn. So maybe you didn't care about some of this other stuff too.
Yeah, and so I don't play sport ball video games generally, but what I
exclusively play Mega Man Soccer. That is it.
That's it. I've been lying about every single other game because all I play is Mega Man Soccer.
Well, I assume that all of these are just different titles for Mega Man Soccer. Like
they're all offshoots and derivatives. But I remember reading maybe like a Cracked article or something like back in the day that was like an imaginary argument between like a super jock and a super nerd, and super nerd is like going to bat for like D&D and Final Fantasy and like all these RPGs. And the super jock is saying like the only good games are like the Madden games. And then the super nerd pointing out that like all of the Madden games have these like obvious RPG elements where you can like send your team to the gym and it like raises their speed and strength, and you can like hire a different coach and a different trade, like these obvious RPG elements where you grow the characters on your team, right? And a lot of what they're doing in MechWarrior feels like these really flimsy underpinnings, right? Like not even the foundation, but more like the blueprints for where the foundation will go. So it's like, oh, well, these are mercenaries, so there's going to be this like haggling mechanic. And it's like, oh, is the haggling mechanic like useful or fun in any way? No, it's not. It's like, oh, well, there's different missions and you can choose what mission you go on. It's like, oh, are they different or unique in any considerable way? No, they're really not. And it's like, so there's basically just a bunch of confirmation. Like instead of pressing A to start the mission, I have to press A 6 times to start the mission, but those 5 additional A presses don't change anything. And that's where I worry, to devil's advocate a little, I worry if you removed all of that theming and it's just like, oh, you don't pick your missions because the boss mercenary tells you where to go and who to kill. And that's where you get your money. So there's no negotiating, there's no mission select, there's none of this other nonsense. And like, you don't choose what your mech is equipped with because it's based on your rank. Like as your rank goes up, you just get a more powerful mech. Like if you pulled all those little faux RPG, faux character universe building mechanics out, like, then you have no story, right? You have nothing.
True.
It's literally just press A to fire rockets, which is, I mean, that game might be super fun. I don't know, but like, it would be a different game.
For sure, it would be. I think that the biggest, I'm not sure that that you should pull out all of that, right? But I would rather you pull out like half of that and shore up the other half. You know, like I think that that's kind of what I'm petitioning for. And
I would bail on negotiating mechanic in a hot second if it meant actual mission variety.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that to like the pacing and kind of everything that we've discussed here kind of comes to my one final note on gameplay mechanics, which is that the game has wildly inconsistent cognitive load, right? So the issue is that you're given all of the time in the world to like make all of these like insane decisions, right? Which is fine. That's great. And I mean, honestly, with the later MechWarrior games, it's something I really enjoyed, because it did have real honesty. Like where on your mech you put the weapons mattered, Yeah,
because if all your weapons are on the arms and the arms get blown off, you now have no weapons.
Exactly. And that made a difference with like your mech type, because some of the mech types, like, oh, you could have a lot more weapons, but it's all in the arms and the legs. And that's what you're most likely to lose, So they give you all this time to make, and they force you to take all this time to like make all these decisions. You can go to the mess hall and like talk to people, whatever, right? And then all of a sudden, like, so that cognitive load is pretty low, and then it spikes dramatically when you're actually in a mission where you've got to like cycle through your weapons, maybe hit the jump jets, walk around, figure out where the bad guys are, target them, all of that other sort of stuff. Like, again, if you're not just using homing missiles, like if you're theoretically using the complete broad spectrum of what the game offers, right? You're cycling through your weapons, you're picking what weapon is the most appropriate, all this sort of stuff. So all of a sudden, like, you're used to like this game where it's like, okay, I'm allowed to like kind of slowly kind of take my time, and oh god, and then it just spike, and it just rockets straight back down into like this low. So that's what makes the pacing feels weird, and it's what makes it kind of feel like a jumbled mess, in my opinion. It's just because like all of a sudden you're being taken from like 5 processes per minute to 50, and then back down to 5 after a minute, and that's jarring. For a great counterexample to that, right, is like, let's take Fallout, right? Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, right? The VATS
how did the perks work in those again? I'm just kidding. Keep going.
Well, if you remember correctly, you get 1 for every level, and you can count at least 5 on your back. Anyways, or at least those were my perks. But so the VAT system is a great way to combat that, right? Because if you want like a higher cognitive load, you can just blaze through the game and then never use the VAT system. If you want a lower cognitive load, use the VAT system. It allows you to slow down and take your time, right? But the fact that they basically, during one section of the game, pin what you're expecting the cognitive load to be at A, and then quintuple it, and then drop it back down to that same level in like a minute, that's very jarring for the player.
It is, and I think I agree with you, but I want to tease this apart just a little bit more, because I think this is what you're getting at, but I'm going to go through a verification step now where we continue the discussion, and then people download and listen to our discussion. What can we call this?
A cast pod.
Yes, ship it. So I think, again, this is a little bit of an almost intentional theming choice where it's like, that's what life would be like, right? You're sitting around, thumb firmly implanted in your rectum, and then the fire alarm goes off and you jump in your mech, you go take some human lives, you collect a paycheck, and then you go back to thumb and rectum in holy matrimony, right? Like, you would have these huge protracted parts of your life that seemed utterly dull and boring, punctuated with terrifying moments of murder, right? Mm-hmm. So that is very on theme, but I think this is a problem video games struggle with, and modern video games have gone way too far in the other direction. Like, take a video game like any of the Batman games, okay? I want to spend basically none of my real life training to become Batman, but if I play a Batman video game, I would like to feel like Batman, right? Mm-hmm. And in older Batman games, like the platform, the older platformer ones, like from this era, you have to like run and jump and climb trees, and your ability to Batman out is largely tied to how fast you can thumbs all over your Super Nintendo controller, right? In the newer Batman games, it is just press X to murder people. And like you just press X and he's doing backflips and batarangs and jumping all over the place and doing all this crazy stuff. And like that to me is way too far in the other direction. And it's like, because at that point you're just watching a Batman cartoon. It's like, I can already watch the Batman animated series that had that amazing voice actor dude. Like, that's already a thing I can do. So there's a sweet spot in between. I don't want to live the actual life of a mech warrior where every day is just a boring slog until the mech warrior alarm goes off. Like, that's too close to real. But I also don't want the game to just be the second I put the cartridge in my Super Nintendo before I even hit the power switch. I'm already in combat, and it's this like super you know what I mean? Like
right when you enter your name as Thrill House, like all of a sudden it just blasts you away.
Yes, yeah. I don't know how close to either of those extremes the virtue is. Like it's definitely not right in the middle. I think it's a closer to the action side though. Like, give me a little bit more of the exciting part of this person's life. Like, when I open a book about Harry Potter, I need to know a little bit about the boring parts of his life, and I want to know a lot about the magical parts, right? Even though the boring parts make up way more of the volume of his life, please spend most of your words on the page on the magical parts. This, I feel like, is the same thing. Like, yeah, okay, MechWarrior, you're in the mess hall, you're asking people about where there's jobs, but spend a little more time on the job.
Well, and I think that I think that you're right. I think that MechWarrior is a very realistic depiction of, I mean, having never been a soldier myself, but like of that type of like mercenary kind of like lifestyle. But that being said, we've said that it's consistent theming it to real life. However, the game itself is not consistently themed to real life, right? So I think that's where that kind of breaks down, is that the game isn't about, like, for example, to just juxtapose a game that does this well, Spec Ops: The Line, right?
Okay. All right.
Right, because that game, right, it has slippy like targeting, right? Like it has like all these things that kind of make it kind of more gritty and kind of feel weird and a little bit off, right? And then they tie that back to the theme of the mission, which is PTSD, right? This game doesn't ever do that. It doesn't ever, like, if they said, like, hey, feeling a little jarred and like out of control, right? Like that's like if the narrative of the game was about like the fact that you're going to go destroy this like horrible corporation, but you yourself become like this, the quest for vengeance destroys you as a person because of like how much strain it puts you under, then forcing the character through that similar narrative, I'd be on board with. But the whole theme of it is you are a fantastical mech warrior, so I, the player, shouldn't, I think that in that case you would definitely, if that's the theme, is like you're basically Tony Stark but bigger but constantly in the Hulkbuster armor, right? then it should be closer on that like action side where it should feel seamless, not feel like this horrible burden that you're carrying, unless again they wanted to theme that out, in which case I would honestly be very interested in that game, but
I'd love to see that that box art with the Nintendo seal of approval where it's like MechWarrior : that horrible burden you're bearing.
And there's the name of the episode right there. MechWarrior : that horrible burden you're bearing.
So okay, so let's do the wrap. So for you, how did this hold up?
This is nostalgia goggles required. Like big old Ray-Ban nostalgia goggles, big old Ray-Ban exclusive nostalgia goggles. No, I mean, like, honestly, did it hold up? No. Did the series hold up? Absolutely. Like what they've done with this foundation is very good, fun, interesting. I haven't played all the games in the series, so I can't say that they're all gems, but definitely the ones I have played, I can see the, like ape beginning to walk upright, like yes, soon, but not not now, not like this. This is not it. So yeah, no, this is not. Don't play this game.
So I'm with you on the firm nostalgia goggles. The one thing that I found whenever there's like a firm nostalgia goggles ranking for a game, it frustrates me if I enjoyed playing the game that I'm like, oh yeah, you don't play this, but I'm going to go over here and enjoy it. And and the reason that I think I landed where I did is it is delightful for about 10 to 30 minutes. 30 minutes is really pushing it, but like, you can get a solid 10, 15, 20 minutes out of this where you're like, oh, this is fun. Like I'm responsible for this mech and like it's mine and I'm like shooting dudes and like, okay, rock on. But my crushing burden for this game was like, I don't know why I'm doing any of the things I'm doing. And it was such a friggin' chore to like go into the cafe and talk to people that I just didn't. Yeah. So like, as far as I know, I don't know if I came within seconds of beating the game or if I was never going to beat it based on the actions I was taking. Like I had no concept of what I was doing or why. And that to me devolves this into a pure combat experience. Is I enjoyed the combat experience, but it's so short and they're so spaced out that it's just like, I'm just here for the homing missiles.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, kind of what I mentioned before was just kind of like all of this wonder and splendor makes me wonder why I should give a damn. And like I said, like it becomes better, but like if everything that came later was MechWarrior, this is really just MechWarrior.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile.